This is the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game.
Rule number one is you have to believe in yourself. You're the only one who doesn't think you belong in this appointment. The prospect has already validated your existence by scheduling time with you. Get it through your head you belong here, go in there, crush it, and close the deal.
A place where sales professionals can come to learn from other sales professionals and thought leaders that have mastered their craft.
The difference between a good salesperson and a best-in-class salesperson is only 2 minutes. By spending an extra 2 minutes on what you might think is a mundane task in the sales game, you separate yourselves from the pack, you grow your book of business, you close more deals, and you retain your accounts.
As well as their peers who are still striving for perfection to achieve their why.
I have a wife and 4 kids. Failure is not an option.
Real sales professionals, real stories, real results. Are you ready to feel the power?
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Power Producers Podcast, where we are refining and redefining the sales game. Today, we are doing yet another episode from the Protege Season 2, and we are featuring Miss Caryn Seifert, who is from the great state of Florida and has an agency down there after a long career selling other stuff. So we're going to talk today about her experience on the show. But before we do that, Caryn, tell them who you are and where you came from and what your background is.
So I'm originally from Ohio. David, I think you are too, right?
I am. What part?
Outside of Cleveland, small town called North Ridgeville.
Okay.
It's easier just to say Cleveland. People are more familiar with that.
But when you're born in Lorain, you know where North Ridgeville is. So
yes, you do.
Yep. I was just up there, actually. Whenever it was, I spoke in Cleveland for the that event for the Insurance Board of Northern Ohio, and I actually went to Cedar Point and spent time with my family that still lives in Lorain, Amherst, and Elyria.
Oh, that's awesome.
I took my 2 older boys and made a trip out of it.
Cool. Was that their first time to Cedar Point?
It was their first time to Cedar Point. It may as well have been my first time to Cedar Point because it's probably been 20 plus years since I had been there. So,
okay. Awesome. So anyway,
Yeah, my parents are from Columbus as well, so.
You got a lot of Ohio on this podcast, Caryn.
Ooh,
That's right.
I can feel the Midwestern vibes. So I've been in Florida for the last 18 years. I got 2 amazing grown kids and a wonderful son-in-law. Actually, my son moved back to Ohio about a year ago. And like you said, David, prior to getting into insurance, I was in B2B sales and management in a lot of different capacities, products, services, whatever. And it was kind of interesting because, I think you might have actually pointed this out, or, it occurred to me when you and I were talking a long time ago, before I even got into the insurance industry, like I was already helping my clients with risk management and mitigating risks before I got into insurance, because I was like helping them with things like OSHA, EPA, and HACCP compliance, and how to prevent slip and falls, training their employees on safety things, such as like the hazardous communication standard, which is always one of the top 10 most cited OSHA violations. So I really wanted to do more and help the business I served even more. And one of my lifelong besties, dad, lost his business. And I think I'm pretty sure I said this in my submission video. He lost a business he worked his whole entire life to build. When the building his business was in went up into flames and it wasn't insured properly. So that's kind of how I decided to get into the insurance business and work with businesses on the commercial side.
You're muted, David.
I wondered why he
Sorry,
was
let me
quiet for so long.
let me explain. Yeah, let me explain what happened. I've been drinking these little Celsius packets, and this one did not tear properly. So I tried to do it with my teeth, and it slipped and cut the living crap out of my gums. So I had to get a knife brought in so that I could have my energy drink, because I'm going to need it to deal with Caryn on this. She's got a lot more energy than I do in the mornings. So, Caryn, when you got into the industry, I think I remember this, but I'm not 100% sure. Did you work as a producer anywhere, or did you just say, screw it, I'm starting an agency. If I'm going to do this, I'm going all in?
So actually I had someone, when I decided to do this, there was someone that had a small agency, had been in the business a long time, had started their agency a few years ago and said, hey, you can come work with me. And I said, okay, great, but I don't want to be an employee. I just want to be a 1099. He said, okay, great, no problem. And then I said, we should have an agreement in writing. And then he gives me this employment and non-compete, and I'm like, what's up? Like, this says you're giving me benefits, and you're not paying me a salary. I'm not an employee. I'm 1099. Like, this agreement was nothing like we agreed to verbally. So let me have my attorney rework it. He didn't like it. It got ugly, and I just said, you know what, this is not going to work.
And so you decided you were opening up Streamlined.
Yes.
So how much experience did you have before you launched the agency in the actual insurance game? Because it doesn't sound like you really got off the ground very well with the first
No.
dude. Well,
they had a website, but there was no SEO. They had no social presence. There was nothing. Like, I Googled them. Like, they didn't even come up on the first page. So, I met with a couple other agencies, and the owners just said, why don't you just start your own?
Interesting.
And I knew that was going to be my goal anyway. I knew I was going to start my own agency. I read some things online that said you shouldn't start an agency until you've worked for somebody for 2 years. And things like
you
that.
threw that out the window.
But, I just said, look, if this is where I'm ultimately going to go, like, let me just do it. Let me just jump in with both feet. Why wait 2 more years? Like, I'm not getting any younger. And, I've run businesses before. Never an insurance business, but,
So talk about some of the challenges with that. Obviously, that's got to be.
Hold on, before
just
you
a
do that,
whole...
before we even get into that, if anybody out there is bitching about what your life is like right now, I want you to hear what Caryn just said she did. She didn't go work for anybody else. She didn't wait until she learned how to produce. She literally opened a scratch agency with no real experience in insurance and no real experience of owning an agency. And that is not a slam by any stretch. I'm telling you that there are a lot of people out there that complain about the position they're in as a producer or as an agency owner, and specifically with lack of support and resources and everything, regardless of position. And here's somebody who just said, screw it, this is where I want to end up at, so I'm going to go ahead and start where I want to end. I respect that a lot. I mean, I think you're nuts, but I respect it.
You're not the only person in my lifetime who's thought I was crazy. There's a lot of things that I've done that people said,
I said
that's not going to work. And I said, well, you're entitled to
I'm not telling you it's not going to work. Yeah, I'm not telling you it's not going to work. I'm just telling you from my perspective, I was a producer for 12 years before I launched Florida Risk. And I know how many challenges I had, just moving over. And keep in mind, I had 10 years of total P&L responsibility before I was ever a producer, so I knew the financial side and how to run the business. But it's a whole different animal when you go, and I hadn't had that responsibility in a little while just because I was producing at the time, but I can't even imagine. So, Kyle, go ahead, lay it on her, because I want to hear the answer.
Can I throw one more thing in there?
Yeah, go ahead.
Like when you asked me about before I opened Streamline if I was working with anyone, and I told you about that little scenario, the real straw that broke the camel's back was, I've been here for 18 years. I've been in B2B sales. I know a lot of people. I've dealt with a ton of businesses, hundreds, thousands of businesses in my career. That BS contract that he gave me said that he would own 50% of my book of business, and if I left, I'd have to buy him out. And that was the deal breaker for me, because I said, you're not, like, what are you doing for me? You're not teaching me, you're not training me, you have no lead generation, you don't have flyers or brochures. Like, what are you doing for me? Why should you get 50% of my book of business? These are my contacts, you know. Like,
that would be a different story. I mean, like, if you were what it sounds like to me is that he gave you a standard non-compete for an employee agent, and what you're telling me about the 50% ownership in the book of business is 100% normal if you're an employee of an agency. That's the same deal that I've had in the other two agencies that I worked in, and if I wanted to leave, I could buy out the other 50% and own it. I shouldn't say it was the exact same deal. Mine was a little bit different, but that part wouldn't freak me out. What would freak me out is if you're not getting any support, any resources, you're generating everything on your own, there is no tech platform or anything like that, why would you be willing to sign any kind of a non-compete agreement for clients that you had to go out and generate on your own dime? Right.
So.
I wouldn't think that. I wouldn't sign that either as an independent contractor.
Yeah.
Yeah, it sounds terrible.
That's what I thought.
Yep. So Kyle, lay it on.
So, well, yeah, no, I just wanted to know what, I mean, you jumped straight in, like, talk about some of the challenges. Cause I mean, we've on this podcast have talked with several, you know, independent agents that just kind of jumped in and they had the experience before, you know, and their biggest thing was like getting appointments. And so I'm just curious if that was the same thing for you, or if it was something else, just because you went, you know, from 0 to 100.
So what were the challenges? Honestly, everything was a challenge.
What wasn't? I was going to say, what wasn't the challenge?
I'm going to tell you, yeah, what wasn't the challenge? Like, everything was. Like, I wasn't really, you know, I mean, I knew, you know, that I needed to pick my colors and my logo and the name and, you know, those kind of basic things that I was good with. When it came to the insurance part, like, that was the hard part. Like, I couldn't find any really good resources on, like, how to start an agency that really got in depth and told you how to go about it. So someday maybe I'll write a book about that. But I think one of the biggest challenges I had initially was you have to have an appointment to get your agency license in Florida. And you can't get your license until you have an appointment. So I'm like, what? How the hell does this work? Like, you can't get one without the other. Neither one will give it to you. So that was a real challenge for me. And I don't even know how it happened, but really just kind of by the grace of God, because a lot of things just happened, I swear, by the grace of God, because I didn't know where to go or how to figure this out. And like, God would just put somebody in my path at the right time, and they had an answer. And I got connected with FAIA, and I spoke to someone there, and I told them what my issue was. You know, they wanted me to join, but I said, okay, but how can you help me? And like, this is what I need right now. And they said, well, we can help you with that. You know, and then getting other appointments, like, actually one of the guys I met with that I was thinking about going to work with, who's now my good buddy, Sir Matt Beck, who has an insurance agency in the same city I'm in, but he's more heavy into personal lines. Like, you know, he made mutual introductions to a lot of people to help me get appointments.
Nice.
So how long have you been at it at this point?
Just a little over a year, probably, because, you know, it took a while to get everything done and set up and get the appointments.
So how would you say things are going at this point, a year in?
Okay, well, I'm a pretty impatient person.
No.
You know, hey, but look, who doesn't like instant gratification, right?
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of it myself.
You know, it's going well, but it's not going as well as I would have hoped it was at this point, but it's getting better every day.
Well, that's good. At least you're making forward progress. I mean, that's better than the alternative, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, like, there were so many things that the Protege helped me with. And, like, in your book, like, the extra 2 minutes, you said you got to go slow before you can go fast.
Yep.
So, and you've probably said that on a podcast or somewhere else before, because I feel like I've heard it from you more than just reading it in your book.
Oh, I say it all the time. You have to slow down to speed up. Like,
yeah.
That's the thing. And it's very, very difficult for people who are wired to be producers to do that. Like, that's the hardest thing in the world, but it applies to so much more when you get in, specifically when you get into middle market and you try and go after it, because you could sit at your desk right now. Like, literally, if you said, you know what, I'm going to throw a few $100 a month at Facebook ads and Google ads and do everything I can to get inbound leads to come in. And you could sit there and you could have activity coming through your website. You could have people calling in. You could be quoting. You could be writing policies. And you could be screwing yourself forever growing that agency to what you want it to be, because people think just because you're busy that you're actually making money. And that's the number one trap that you fall into when you're new as an agency owner. And listen, I'm not speaking at you. I'm telling you what I went through. And I've talked about this a lot with everybody that has been on Protege, but you get to that point where you're feeling like, God, I just have all this pressure and people are harping at me for new business, and my kids need to eat, and all of this other stuff. And you start breaking your own promise to yourself that this is how I'm going to build my agency. I'm not going to deviate from it. And next thing you know, you're getting E&S policies from artisan contractors that are going to cancel for non-pay in 3 months, and you're dealing with chargebacks to the carrier and unearned commissions and all of this other stuff, when really, if you just slow down and breathe and you say, I'm only going to write this, even though it takes a little bit longer, it's so much smoother in the process. And it's the easiest advice in the world to give from the other side of that, but it's the hardest thing to live when you're going through it. It's 100% the most difficult thing.
No, I get it. But just like, reading that in the extra 2 minutes and hearing you say that a couple times, like, it really helped me, because, like I said, I have a tendency to be a little impatient, and mostly with myself. I'm like more impatient with myself than anybody else, because like I just am. So, but that helped me a lot. And
every time you feel yourself getting impatient, pick up the phone and telemarket to 15 people.
What's that?
Every time you feel yourself getting impatient, pick up the phones and telemarket to 15 people. One of two things is going to happen, or both, right? You're going to get appointments, and that's going to cure your impatience, or you're going to get sick of being on the phone, so you're not going to allow yourself to get impatient, right?
Right.
But do that. You make forward progress that way. That's one thing that I always used to do, because I hate the phones. I hate calling, with a passion.
Same.
I was talking about this with Abby yesterday in the office. And I told her, I'm like, it's not even that I'm bad at them. I'm actually really good. Like, if somebody calls in and they want to talk and they're looking for coverage, I will literally take 15 minutes to explain everything that they need to know. I will educate them. Raphael was on vacation last week, right? I've never written a mobile pet groomer in my life, but we have a niche for mobile pet groomers at Florida Risk. So we get all of these inbound leads, and I actually wrote 2 mobile pet groomers over the phone while I was quoting them and talking to them and explaining everything to them last week. But I don't want to pick up the phone and dial cold to mobile pet groomers.
I just can't get Harry out of my head from Dumb and Dumber, man. I just can't. with the shagging wagon.
I was going back and forth with Chris Langell from Advisor Evolved this morning, because his other company, they do our website and local traffic marketing. His other company does the paid ads. And I'm like, dude, we are absolutely crushing this mobile pet grooming thing. So go ahead and put
crazy.
Go ahead and put the Facebook ads up. And he goes, this is so weird, because when you do all the keyword research, there's nothing there for it. And I'm like, well, it worked well on the wedding, so let's see what happens. And guess what? Sure enough, the inbound stuff happened. But I said, I just picture these people all driving around in that stupid thing from Dumb and Dumber the whole time.
The music just plays in my head where he's like, going over the jump and the mustard flies everywhere. It's so good. I agree
anyhow.
with you on the phone situation, and I hate it, and it just, to me, I think it's because it feels like a chore, and chores suck. But I would be happy to go out and if I was going to make 30 calls on the phone, I would be so much happier just to walk into 30 businesses and talk with them in person. Just how I've always been, and it's probably because that's what most of my sales roles in the past have been. But I don't know, man. The phone's just and I think most people kind of say that, and I don't know if there's something else to it, but
There's one guy I know on the face of the earth that loves the phones.
yeah, I know who you're going to say.
Chris Beal from Connect and Sell.
That's it.
That's the one guy that loves the phones.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is. It's just not my thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, dude, the memes are all over social media. Pictures of the phone that says, pick me up, I make you money, right? Like,
Yeah.
we know it works. It's just, I don't know. It's just a weird mental block, I guess.
Yeah, I agree.
The thing I hate the most about the phones is, it's so hard to get anybody to answer their phone today. Like,
It is.
people just don't answer their phone. So, like,
If I see a call come in that I don't know the number, that's going to voicemail. And
Dude, my
it's
phone is set up to, if you're not in my
Yeah.
contacts list, you're automatically going to voicemail. It doesn't even ring.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I think the other thing too about the phones is that it is versus like in person. Like I like it in person more because there's obvious things like, body language cues and things like that. But it's way harder just to tell somebody no in person when they're there having a conversation with you than it is to just be a dick on the phone.
Yeah,
Like-
especially when I walk in like a big dumb animal. I mean, nobody's
Yeah.
nobody's going to push
They
me out.
want to
They
hear
feel
what
sorry
you
for me.
They want to hear what you have to say.
Let the fat guy eat. Let him eat. We want to hear what he has to say so he can afford to buy his lunch.
Like, even if they don't want to hear you say, it's way harder to tell somebody no in person than it is on
Right.
the phone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. So listen, you see the announcement. Why did you decide to throw your hat in the ring?
Oh, well, that's really
Protege.
simple. That's just simple. I wanted your killing commercial program. That was my whole
Well,
There you go.
Well, you got it. I mean, you didn't get the whole thing, but you got a good flavor of it. And I mean, I think, remind me who your coaches were. I'm having a brain freeze.
Ryan Keating and Mick Hunt.
Oh, jeez. Well, you couldn't have had better. I can't
Talk
speak
about my
for
coaches
Keating.
like that.
Yeah, I can't speak for Keating. He looks like the guy from Ray Donovan on Amazon. But
Keating
He
was
does.
awesome. Keating
no, he
was-
is. I love. Listen,
He
when
went-
Ryan's
he went
on,
above and
Ryan's on.
beyond. Yeah, he
Yeah, when he-
seriously went above and beyond. He was great. Both of them.
Absolutely. I love him to death, but I also love to bust his chops, and that's just the way it's always going to be. He's kind of like a little brother to me. But I'm really glad you had Mick because, from somebody who didn't have experience running an agency, like that guy's, in my opinion, the best in the country for going in and showing people how to put in RevOps in their agency. Like, there is nobody better, in my opinion. He could come in here and improve Florida Risk dramatically, and we've talked about it, right? And when the time comes, he's going to come in and do that. But, I think that you actually got two really good coaches because Keating is not dumb, okay? Keating is actually really, really smart. And when when he was on Protege last season, when he was on, man, his work product was the best. Like, he went to a completely different level than I ever would have expected him to go to, just based on us hanging out socially, right? Because Ryan and I never really have done deals together or worked on anything. But when I saw some of the spreadsheets and things like that he put together and how he really thinks behind the scenes, he's a really analytical guy, when he wants to be.
Yeah, he is.
Keating, if you're listening to this, man, that's how you need to be every day. It doesn't need to come in waves. Don't blame it on your dad. It's you.
Well, I think probably one of the things that's huge for him too is all the other experience that he's had. I mean, he's one of the people that I know that's got more jobs than I've had. But
We had Keating on the podcast before he was ever on Protege, And we were like 15, 20 minutes in, and he is still rattling off his work experience. And I stopped him. I'm like, are we interviewing Forrest Gump for crying out loud? How many jobs have you had in your life?
Cherry orchards in there. And
Yeah.
Also, but he worked for Sidcor too, which is the main company that, I was working for the office supplies. And it's like, I mean, it really was kind of a master, a master's in sales. It's like an accelerated, master class in that. And it's, I know that's contributed to some of his success for sure.
Yep. Yeah, he does pretty well considering, the situation that he's in up there. He's kind of got his hands handcuffed a little bit. And I know, again, man, we talked with Stephen Turnbull yesterday about working in a family agency. Keating's lasted longer than I would. And I mean, it's not a shot at his dad by any stretch. His dad's a really nice guy too, but we've got to figure out how to solve this problem of the old guard of agency principals and the new breed of people that are going to be moving in and taking their place, and figure out how to get them to get along and work with each other and collaborate while they're coexisting, right? Because that's the only way these perpetuation plans are going to work.
Yeah.
How do you do that? I mean, I feel like it's like that in every single industry. Like, I mean, even you like, look at the NBA. You've got all these old NBA stars like, Bill Russell and Jerry West are having beef with the new, with JJ Redick and the stuff that he says about how like the old NBA players would just get absolutely dusted into today's
No
NBA.
chance.
And it's
Tell
like,
that to Bill Lambier and see what happens.
well, I know, but it's like it's a totally different game now, and it's just like you're comparing two things that aren't the same. But I feel like this is the same. It happens in every industry. Like how do you bridge that gap without somebody feeling like their way is right and the new way is wrong, and vice versa?
Well, if I was going to deal with JJ Redick, I would just introduce Detroit Pistons and see how he liked them. Let him make those comments to those guys.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah, he would. I like JJ Redick. I liked him as a player. I think his job as an analyst is to be the guy that's coming out with hot takes and pushing buttons and stuff like that. But anyhow, I think that is
of the NBA.
Here you go.
So, Caryn, you get into the Protege. What is the biggest surprise that you got through the time that you were in the challenges?
Oh boy, I had surprises every day.
Load us up.
In the Protege and outside of the Protege, but honestly, at the end of it, when everything is said and done, I think looking back at the very end, the thing that probably surprised me the most is that there were, how many contestants were there initially? How many did we start with?
16.
16. So, the thing that really surprised me the most looking back is that there's 16 people. David, I know you have a lot going on between Florida Risk Partners and Killing Commercial and the podcast and the Protege and your 4 kids and your lovely wife and who knows whatever else. But, you got a lot going on. So what really surprised me is that you actually took the time to sit down on every single challenge and watch 16 submissions.
Twice.
Well, that doesn't surprise me because you give really thoughtful and thorough feedback.
And sometimes direct. Most of the time direct.
Yeah, most of the time it was very direct, but you know what I love? I love that. Even though sometimes it's not what you want to hear, I love it because it's not BS. And how can you get better? You can't get better if somebody's just telling you what you want to hear. I prefer brutal honesty. So tell me the truth. And you did, but you took the time. You didn't just say, hey, yeah, that was okay, or good job, or, you could have done a little better. No, you were really thoughtful and took the time to explain things. So that surprised me. That was a lot for you to do.
It is. It's why I question whether or not I'll ever do season 3. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm on the fence right now. I'm not sure what's going to happen. So, what was when you were going through the challenges? What was the toughest challenge for you? And here's the thing that I'll while you're thinking about that, because I'll make some comments while you're thinking about it. One of the things that we did differently this year that we didn't do last year is You guys had 2 weeks. Last season, it was only 1 week between challenges because we were trying to cram everything we could as quickly as we could to get people into the production round so that we could do the live thing, because this was originally supposed to be revealed at Innovation in Tampa in the spring for season 1. So we were addressing it as if we had to have everybody through all of the competition, including the production piece, by April. So we started and worked through the holidays and everything else. And then when Innovation got moved to November, I was like, I can't make these people, I can't drag this out. I mean, it wasn't even about me. It was about, I didn't want them to have to drag out that long, because if we would have waited until Innovation in November to have the final 3 and the results of the live vote and their last presentations and everything, they literally would have been competing for a year at that point, because we started in November or October before Christmas. And so I said, I'm not doing that again. I'm going to give everybody 2 weeks between challenges, and hopefully that will help me not have to chase people down for submissions and all of the other things. What I found out was I don't really think it mattered, because the people that were going to feel rushed in the process still felt rushed, even though it was 2 weeks, and I still had to chase people down. And that became problematic because, when I wasn't getting submissions in a timely fashion, I know, Caryn, this is going to be really hard for you to believe, but I am a big softy in some circumstances, and I let it slide more than I should have. I should have just cut their ass immediately, but I didn't, because I had quality people that I knew had a quality work product. And for the overall integrity of the show itself, and teaching other people who don't have the courage to put themselves out there, that are watching on YouTube, I wanted to make sure they saw that work product, because my ultimate goal is to educate the industry, period. And so what happened is that pushed back, and unfortunately it pushed back too far, and it got into my travel season, and then all bets were off, because I ran like a wild man for almost 2 months and didn't have time to sit and watch videos. I didn't have time to give feedback. And as we got into challenges 7 and 8, you guys saw that, because it took forever to get the last 2 episodes done. I simply didn't have the bandwidth to do it. So for me, I'm looking at it and I'm like, if I do this again, how do I want to do it? Well, guess what? Number 1, I'm going to change the challenge piece. Number 2, I'm not letting 16 people in ever again. I'm cutting people right out of the box, because I allowed that many people in because I thought those were like all really good people from an application standpoint, from a background standpoint, and everything else. It's just too much to manage. And, then when I got down to the finals, who's going to go out into production, I couldn't make the cut. I couldn't do it. That's why we have 8 instead of 6, because the 4 people that I was on the fence about, between it being 6 and 8, I just said they're too close. I'm not going to make the cut. I'll just roll it out as a surprise and let 8 people go into the production round, and then we'll narrow it down to 3 from there. Then it's not my decision. It's up to their results, and they can't blame me for it. So I felt like by us going to 8, I gave everybody the best 8 that could do it. So all that to say, what do you think? What was your toughest challenge when you went through it?
Man, I'm going to be like, thank God we had 2 weeks.
Yeah.
1 would have been, that would have been really tough. Honestly, like, this is so not what you're going to want to hear, because I know how I remember something you said in the past, but honestly, like, the hardest part for me was just like carving out the time to get them done. And this wasn't something I knew was going to happen when I sent in my submission video, but besides trying to run my agency while going through the Protege challenges, I had to do a complete and total rehab on 2 properties, 2 single family homes, and dealing with an eviction at another property, and taking 3 of my CIC classes, and all of this was happening over the course of like 4 months. I'm trying to juggle all these things. Like, I was literally working 12, 15, 18-hour days, nonstop, no break, 7 days a week for 4 months.
Wow.
So you want to be a producer?
Like, what?
I said, so you want to be a producer?
Well, that's behind
It'll
me
be
now.
fun, they said.
That's behind me now. It was something that had to be done, so whatever. It wasn't
Yeah, but the
planned.
fact is, Caryn, here's the thing. If you wouldn't have told me that, I would have never known because your work product didn't suffer. So if you want a pat on the back, not that you need one, but I'm telling you, like, I never would have known that you were spread that thin because I look at it this way. I mean, and basically because of the rehab stuff. If you were telling me that it was just getting in the way of you running the agency, I probably wouldn't listen to you, right? Because in my mind, and we talked about this. We talked with Brian McCall yesterday. What an audio circus that was. But when we were talking to him yesterday, I told him, I'm like, I think the biggest disconnect for the people that compete in the show is that they think they're doing it for the show. They're not. If they pay attention and they do the challenges, they're building the value prop and the processes for their career as a producer as they go. Like, you're literally getting everything in a box, for lack of a better description, that if you take that seriously and you build it like, this is what I'm going to use in my agency going forward, you're ultimately going to be successful. I don't care if you win the show or not, right?
Right.
Derek Hayden built an awesome mousetrap last year. He wrote $70,000 of revenue in 3 months for his agency using the mousetrap he built in the Protege. Jason Webb didn't write crap when he was in the production round. Webb has written several $100,000 in revenue now because of the tools he built in the people he was around and the mentorship that he had and all of that in the Protege. So he's a winner in real life because he took it seriously. It's just sometimes the flywheel is not going to catch in that 3-month window of production, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to catch, right?
Right.
So, and the trick is, and I can't come out and tell everybody this, but the trick is that if you're building this stuff, you need to start using it as you're building it because you don't want to start in the 3-month production round. You already want to have velocity before you get there so that you're landing stuff. For people who wait until those 3 months to originate deals, hoping they're going to close them and be able to win, it's going to be really, really tough for them to do that because it's a long sales cycle or a longer sales cycle. But if they start in January, they've got opportunities.
I agree.
So you're out. Go ahead.
So, like, one other thing, like, as far as the challenges, like, go. I think probably the one that was, like, the most challenging for me was the lead nurturing campaign. And even though I've worked previously for very large, major national corporations, I'm familiar with CRMs, I have a CRM for my agency. None of these major corporations I worked for, none of them had a lead nurturing campaign. They didn't have one. So that was probably my most challenging because I was also trying to figure out, like, okay, what's the best subject lines and researching, like, what subject lines have the highest open rate and content and and just trying to figure out the timing, the frequency of how to send it out.
I will tell you, out of every, and I've said this to a couple of people, but you all deserve it. I can't think of a time when I gave feedback that yours was terrible, right? Like and what I mean is, I think that you were definitely, if I were to pick a top 3 of being consistent with your work product, whether it got edited into what we put on YouTube or not is irrelevant to the thought process. But I can't think of a time, like you were definitely one of the top 3 most consistent people with your work product every week. There's no doubt in my mind about that.
Well, look, I took this serious. I took this like, this is part of my job. I mean, yeah, I want the Killing Commercial program, but I'm still going to do my best on every single challenge because I know this is going to help me build the foundation going forward and to, just all of the challenges we did and build up my value proposition and all of those things. There was things that I knew I needed to do, but I hadn't done. And some of them were part of our challenges. And it really helped me from the standpoint that I had a deadline. Like, you gave us a deadline. Like, so, you know.
So you want to know what my devious thoughts behind the scenes were? What my original intention and hope was for you was that somehow Ciara would draft you, since you guys are both down in South Florida, and that she would be able to coach you and y'all figured out a way you could work together moving forward. But that went out the window when you got drafted by Mick and Ryan. So that was my original hope.
That doesn't mean that can't still or might not
No,
happen.
but I was really thinking, man, if Ciara can work with this lady, they're close, like it would have been really, really cool. But I didn't put that bug in her ear, right? I didn't say anything. I wanted to let the cards fall as they did, and who knows, maybe it worked out better for you the way that it is. And you're right, it doesn't mean that you still can't have a relationship with her and figure out how to make things happen. So
yeah. I mean, I think I just spoke to her like maybe 2 weeks ago briefly. She's awesome. I love Ciara.
Absolutely. So you're out on the streets now, right? You're in production round. How's that going?
It's going. It's because of all the things I had going on that I explained to you, I didn't really have the momentum or the velocity.
Well, that was my next question: is
That
how much of the distractions affected where you're at right now?
Tremendously. Actually, when you notified me on June 21st that I was in the finals, I was kind of like, oh shit. But I'm like, well, I'm here, so run with it. Like,
well, you got to eat anyhow.
Yeah.
I mean,
right. So
the production round just means you're doing your job every day at this point.
Right. Yeah, so like there's some things, as I've been going through the production, like there's some things like I'm finding like I need to tweak and change some things, like my cold calling script after the workshop that you and Mick did, the Premier Selling one recently.
Oh yeah.
I changed up my cold calling script. So I'm using something different now because of that workshop. So it's not the same one that I created during the Protege. I think that one was like a little too salesy and it just wasn't resonating well with people.
So has it worked? The changes that you made?
I mean, I think it's working better. So far it seems to be.
It's only been a week, right?
Like,
Ah,
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. It's only been about a week.
Let us know in another couple weeks.
Nobody's cursed me out. Nobody's thrown me out and slammed the door on my face.
These are wins.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the thing too is it's like, I go back to it all the time when I was talking with Ryan Stillwell, who's in Power Producers Mastermind one day. He always asks, like, one of his questions is, are you going to hate me if I tell you this call is about insurance? And he gets a lot of traction because people are like, no, I'm not going to hate you. I mean, I probably don't want to talk to you or whatever, but then you can at least have a dialogue started, right? And he'll call people. He calls contractors on their cell phones in the morning, like 7 o'clock.
When they're available.
100%.
That's when they're heading out to the job site.
I think the script is an ever evolving weapon that we all have in our arsenal, and if you get too comfortable with it, that's why you have to constantly like look at your stats and see what's working and what's not, because the numbers aren't going to lie. You just have to figure out get your reports and then work your way back to figure out what part of the process is broken. It's not hard to figure out, right? That's why, I mean, it's never, to me, if you have good data in your business, running the business is not difficult, period. Like, I was 22 years old, had never even bagged groceries other than for my mother, and I was running a store that did $15-16 million a year in sales. I had reports.
Wow.
I knew what all of the line items were that I needed to fix. So as long as I had a report that says, oh yeah, you need to but the thing is, if you don't have the data integrity, if your AMS is jacked up, if your CRM's jacked up, and you don't have the reporting capabilities, it makes it almost impossible to run the business profitably.
Right.
For sure.
Yeah, well, technology, is not my friend. So, I've got someone that, helps with a lot of that stuff.
As do I. I'm definitely in that boat with you. Well, listen, I want to be respectful of your time. We're actually over. I've been trying to keep these at 30 minutes or so, and Brian McCall, God, I think that guy would have gone for 2.5 hours if we would have let him yesterday. Good grief. But anyhow, before we let you go to get after it, because I don't want to be the reason why you don't produce anything today, any parting words of wisdom? If you had the ability to talk to somebody who was on the fence and said, yeah, I don't really think I want to throw my hat in the ring, I don't think I'll learn anything from it, or it won't be a valuable experience for me, what would your response to them be?
They would be crazy not to. They would be absolutely crazy not to. They have absolutely nothing to lose and everything to gain.
There you go.
Well,
you're just, it doesn't cost them anything. You're giving yourself and your time, and the coaches are willing and helpful, and they're volunteering their time. Like, they'd be a fool not to take advantage of an opportunity like that.
Yeah, and in case anybody didn't listen to any of the other episodes, here's the other part that Caryn doesn't know. Nobody lost. Nobody lost in this competition. If you made it to the final 12, you didn't lose. Because when I had to cut from 12 to 8, I told the 4 people that I let go, I gave them one-on-one coaching for 30 minutes every other week for, I don't remember if it was 6 months or a year, but they all got something for participating. I mean, I didn't have to do that. In my opinion, they got the experience from the other people that were their coaches. And I'm not saying that to pat myself on the back. I say that because I have a lot of respect. No matter how bad my feedback has been for anybody, I have a lot of respect for the fact that anybody who was willing to put their neck on the line and go out and try, because there's so many people that don't. And those are the people that are going to sit back and criticize and do this and do that. And to them, I give them a big virtual middle finger. They don't have a vote in the process, right? It's none of their business because they're sitting in their lazy boy and everybody else is putting on their work boots to go out and actually get after it. So, to that end, nobody in the competition has lost. They've all gained something from it, and hopefully they've gained things that'll carry well into the future. With that being said, I'm going to wrap up this episode. That you get after it today. Kyle and I have some service things we got to handle. We've got we're covering multiple desks this week between the two of us. So I'm actually issuing certificates this morning, if you can believe that.
It's the best.
Wow.
It's fantastic. But why do we do that? Because we need our team to be well rested and happy and enjoy time with their family and vacation. And I say it tongue in cheek. I really don't mind doing it. It's good for me to. What it does is it forces me to get into the systems more than I really do. I'm rarely in HubSpot unless it's to look at a report, right? So I'm not looking at contact records. I'm typically not really drilling down on deals and things like that. I'm even less involved with Hawksoft because all I need from that's the reports. But when I start digging around, then I'm like, we missed this, we missed this, we missed this, and then I end up sitting in the systems all day fixing stuff. So that's what happens. Anyhow, Caryn, thank you so much for your time today. Thank you for participating. I appreciate everything that you've put into this. It means even more knowing the adversity you were dealing with in other areas of your life. And you know this, but I wish you absolutely nothing but the best and continued success. And you know that even though I can be grumpy sometimes, you can email me anytime you want, and I will help you as best I can. So that being said, you do need to know this. Everybody in the production round does get a 1-hour lifeline. So if you get an account, even if it's a janitorial account that we've talked about 1,500 times before this morning, and you need help, this is your time to get it. So know that you have that out there, okay?
Thank you.
Everybody else, we'll catch you next week.
You've been listening to the Power Producers Podcast. You can follow Killing Commercial Insurance on Facebook and YouTube. And if you want to take your game to the next level, check out our book, The Extra 2 Minutes, and our website, killingcommercial.com.